The stars of Valoria's sky were sharp and blue, unlike anything Mason had seen before. He stood still in the middle of the great open plaza. Thousands of Valorians surrounded the ceremony area. Their robes moved in the soft wind, and the light from the twin moons made their armor shine like water. Mason adjusted his helmet. His job was to protect Earth's ambassador. That was all, nothing more. But his eyes kept returning to the tall figure standing near the throne. Princess Nira. She stood straight, silent, and proud. Her silver headpiece marked her as the heir to the Valorian Empire. Her skin shimmered with soft color under the sun, and her voice earlier had been calm and commanding. She was not smiling, but Mason could see something behind her cold look. She was watching everything. She was thinking, reading the crowd. Just like him, the ceremony was for peace. Earth and Valoria had been enemies once, but now they were allies. After many battles and many lost soldiers, they were trying to start again still. Not everyone liked peace. Mason's hand rested near the side of his uniform, where his pulse pistol sat in a holster. He watched the crowd closely. So many eyes, so many faces. Any one of them could be hiding a threat. The Valorian high voice stepped forward. He raised his hand and began to speak in a loud, clear tone. The words were formal and slow. Mason didn't understand the language, but the translator in his ear gave him the basic idea. Peace is strength. Peace is unity. Peace is born from shared blood. Then Mason saw it. A cloaked figure was pushing through the crowd fast. Too fast. People were shouting, stepping aside. Mason's training kicked in. His eyes locked onto the figure. A flash of metal shone from under the cloaked blade. The attacker leaped from the crowd toward the stage, straight at Princess Nira. Mason moved without thinking. His boots hit the stairs as he jumped up, drawing his weapon. But the assassin was already in the air, blade pulled back to strike. Mason saw Nira's eyes widen in surprise, but she did not move. He got in front of her just in time. The blade slashed across his side. Pain burst through his body. His weapon fell from his hand. He stumbled, his arm numb, his chest burning. But the blade had not reached her. He had stopped it. Mason fell to the ground, blood pooling under him. He saw the guards rush in. They tackled the attacker, dragging the cloaked figure away. He tried to breathe, but each breath was sharp like fire. Then a shadow fell over him. Princess Nira knelt beside him, her face calm, but her eyes full of something he had not seen before. Worry, concern. Why? She asked in her quiet voice. Mason tried to speak, but only coughed. You saved me, she said. You're human, yet you jumped between me and death. Mason blinked slowly. My job, he whispered. Protect all guests. Nira looked around. Get a healer. Now, she ordered. Her voice was sharp. The guards moved quickly. A healing team ran forward, placing glowing patches over Mason's wounds and injecting him with foam to stop the bleeding. His eyes started to close. The pain was fading. The world was getting soft. Before he passed out, he heard her voice again. You have done more than your duty, soldier. My life is yours now. Mason woke in a warm bed surrounded by soft lights. The ceiling above him was smooth and glowing gently. He turned his head and saw machines blinking softly beside him. He wasn't dead. That much was clear. A quiet figure sat near his bed. Princess Nira. She wore no crown now, just a simple robe of silver and blue. Her face was calm, but her eyes were locked on his. She leaned forward slightly when she saw him awake. You are strong, she said. Most would not survive that wound. Mason tried to sit up, but she raised a hand. Rest, she said. You are healing. What happened? He asked. The assassin was stopped. He was not Valorian. He was hired by someone who wants the peace talks to fail. And you? Mason asked. Are you all right? I'm alive, she said. Because of you. He looked at her. Just doing my duty. She looked at him quietly for a moment, then said something strange. You have triggered the law of bonded honor. When a royal life is saved by another, we are bound to repay the debt. Mason blinked. Repay? Yes, it is not a choice. My people follow this law deeply. I now owe you a life debt. I must protect you as you protected me. Until the debt is balanced. That sounds serious, Mason said. It is, she answered. Can't I just say you're welcome and we forget? This, she shook her head slowly. That would dishonor us both. Mason lay back in silence. He was a soldier. He had signed up for danger. But this was something else. You don't have to follow me around, he said. I'm not royalty. But you acted like one. Nira said. The room fell quiet. The machines hummed softly. Outside the window, stars moved across the sky. Mason looked up at the ceiling, his body aching but alive. He had no idea what he had started, and Nira, sitting silently beside him, had no intention of leaving. Mason walked slowly across the Valorian palace garden. His side still hurt, but the healing tech had done a good job. Every breath felt easier now. He had been awake for 2 days, and the doctors said he would fully recover in another week. Behind him, quiet as ever, walked Princess Nira. She had followed him since the moment he left the healing chamber. Not just walking beside him, but watching him, every step, every move. Her silver robe brushed gently against the leaves as they moved through the garden path. Mason finally stopped near a water fountain and turned toward her. You're still here, he said. And Ira gave a small nod. Yes, I told you. I owe you a life debt. I must stay near you. You are now under my protection. You say that like I'm some fragile bird, Mason said. Raising an eyebrow, Nira didn't smile, but her voice was softer. I say it because it is our law. If you had died saving me, your people would have asked for justice, but you lived, and now your life holds weight in Valorian culture. I must return what was given. Mason looked at the stars above. So what does that mean, exactly? You'll be my bodyguard until the debt is paid, she said firmly. And how long does that take? Nira looked at him, her golden eyes serious. Some debts are never fully repaid, but I will remain until balance is restored. He sat on the edge of the fountain and let out a slow breath. You do realize this is going to be complicated, right? Earth Command won't like this. They'll say it's a political risk. I don't answer to Earth Command, Nira said. I answer to Valorian law, and so do you now. As part of this agreement, Mason gave a short laugh. I never agreed to anything. You did when you stepped in front of that blade. Silence fell between them again. Mason could hear the soft splash of water behind him. He could see the stars reflected in Nira's calm expression. You don't even know me, he said. But I will, she answered. Back inside the embassy wing, Mason met with Commander Brooks, the Earth diplomat in charge. She was a sharp woman in a blue uniform, her face tight with concern as she looked at the report. So the princess won't leave your side? Brooks asked. Not for a second, Mason said. And she's serious about this life debt thing? Completely. Brooks leaned back in her chair. This could start a storm back home. We're still trying to build trust with the Valorians. And now one of their royals is tied to a human soldier like a shadow. I didn't ask for this, Mason said. But she saved my life during recovery too. I nearly slipped into shock one night, and she activated the healing unit before the nurses even saw it. Brooks frowned. They don't take this lightly. I read about their traditions. When a royal swears a life debt, it becomes part of their record forever. It's not a game. Mason nodded. She told me that. She means it. Brooks closed the file and stood. Fine. But if she's staying with you, you're going to need to leave with her. What? We're sending you both to the forward base on Valoria's North Edge. It's remote, quiet, and far from politics. You'll be safer there. We'll say it's for your healing and observation. So I'm being exiled. You're being protected. Brooks said, and watched. The forward base sat between two hills, surrounded by tall dark trees and strange red plants. A group of human and Valorian engineers lived there, working together on new defense tech. It was peaceful but isolated. Mason arrived with Nira beside him. The soldiers at the base stood still in confusion when they saw the princess walking beside a human, like a personal guard. Some whispered, others stared. Let them talk, Mason said quietly. I'm used to being watched, Nira replied. The base commander, an old soldier named Darnell, welcomed them with a short nod. He didn't ask questions. He just handed Mason a small data tablet and pointed to a quiet room in the south wing. "This'll be your quarters. Hers too, I guess," he said. Mason blinked. "Wait, what?" Nira spoke before Mason could finish. "I only need a small corner. I do not sleep often." Darnell shrugged. "Fine by me. Just keep it calm here. We don't want trouble." Mason entered the room. It was simple, with 2 bunks, a desk, and a small window. He dropped his bag on one bed. Nira placed her staff beside the wall and sat quietly in the corner. "This is going to be strange," Mason said. Nira looked at him. "Not for me." Days passed. At the base, Mason helped the engineers with patrol duties. Nira followed silently, always alert. She trained in the courtyard each morning, her long staff moving in graceful arcs. The soldiers slowly stopped whispering. They began asking her questions. One asked to spar with her. She accepted. The soldier lost in less than 10 seconds. Mason watched her every day. He began to understand that she wasn't just some royal figure. She was a warrior. She had trained her whole life for war, for survival, for loyalty. And now she had pointed all that toward him. One evening, they sat outside the base walls, watching the twin moons rise over the hills. "You don't talk much," Mason said. "I speak when needed," Nira replied. "You don't seem angry about being stuck with me." "I am not stuck. I chose to follow the law. I respect it." He looked at her. "What happens if I save your life again?" She turned her head slowly. "Then the bond deepens, and if you save mine, then the balance continues. Until one day it is even." Mason nodded slowly. "I guess we're in this together." "Yes," Nira said. "But remember this, if you face danger again, I will stand in front of you, always." Mason looked at her in silence. For the first time since the attack, he felt something new. Not fear, not confusion, but trust, and he knew this was only the beginning. The northern base was quiet, but that peace did not last long. One morning, a warning came through the command console. Mason was in the control room, reading reports. When the red alert flashed on the screen, Commander Darnell stepped in, holding a small data pad with a worried look. 3 Valorian outposts near the border were attacked. Darnell said, "No warning, no distress calls, all gone dark." Mason stood quickly. "Who did it?" "We don't know. Could be raiders, could be rebel cells, could be something worse." Nira entered the room behind them. She had heard every word. "They are testing our strength," she said. Darnell looked at her. "You think this is the beginning of something?" "Yes," Nira said. "Our enemies hate peace. They want to see how far they can strike without a strong answer. We must respond," Mason agreed. He had seen enough battles to know that silence from a destroyed post was never a good sign. Later that day, orders came from the Valorian High Command and Earth Joint Defense. A small team would be sent to scout one of the damaged outposts. Mason was chosen to lead, and Nira, of course, was going with him. The drop ship hovered above the forest for a moment, then lowered gently onto a wide stone platform. Mason stepped out first, his boots hitting the cracked tiles of the abandoned outpost. Nira followed, her silver armor reflecting the sunlight. The air was still, too still. Trees around the outpost were blackened at the edges. Mason saw signs of plasma fire, burned walls, broken gates, crushed machines, but no bodies. "Where's the team that was stationed here?" one of the soldiers asked, stepping behind Mason. "They're gone," Mason said. Nira scanned the ground. They didn't flee. "There are no escape tracks." Mason moved carefully toward the center building. Its doors were half open, sliced clean by something sharp. Inside, the lights were dead, but his visor gave him a clear view. He raised his hand and motioned the others forward. They searched for over an hour. Not a single life form, not a single message left behind. Then Mason found it. On the floor of the command room was a small device, a signal jammer. Very advanced, not Valorian, not human, but something else. Nira looked at the markings on the side. "This is Quarantech," she said. Mason's eyes narrowed. I thought the Corn Republic signed the peace treaty. They did. Nira replied. But some of the factions did. Not, especially the group called the Varn sect. They don't follow the main government anymore. They believe war is the only answer. Mason picked up the device carefully. So they're trying to restart the conflict, or stop the alliance between Earth and Valoria before it becomes too strong, Nira said. Back at the forward base, Mason sent a full report to Commander Brooks. She replied quickly, her face serious on the screen. We can't afford a full war, she said. But we also can't ignore this. We're forming a new strike team. You'll be leading it. Your mission is to protect the outer communication relays. If the enemy cuts them, we lose all signals across this region. Mason nodded. Understood. Brooks looked at Nira, who stood just behind him. And you, Princess, will be part of this mission too. I will never leave his side, Nira said calmly. Brooks gave a small sigh. Then I hope you're as good in battle as the reports say. She's better, Mason replied. The next morning, Mason and Nira joined a small team of human and Valorian soldiers. They moved an armored transport across the wild terrain, heading toward the first communication tower. It stood alone on a tall cliff. Glowing with soft blue light, they reached it just after sunset. Mason ordered the team to set up a defense circle around the base. Nira stood on the cliff edge, her eyes scanning the forest below. They are coming, she said. Mason stepped beside her. You see something? No. I feel it. He didn't doubt her. Valorians had stronger senses than humans, and she was trained to detect movement, energy, even sound from far away. The night grew darker. Then came the sound, a deep hum, like a storm approaching. Suddenly, dozens of black shapes appeared from the trees below, small drones flying low. Fast and silent, they came up the cliff like a wave. Positions, Mason shouted. The soldiers raised their rifles and opened fire. Lasers cut through the night sky. Drones exploded, some falling like burning stones. But more came. Nira moved like wind. Her energy blade lit up, blue and sharp. She leaped forward, slashing through 3 drones in one motion. Mason stayed close, shooting down every target that got near. One of the drones locked onto Mason and fired a red bolt. Nira spun and blocked it with her blade, then jumped onto the drone, slicing it in half. Mason looked at her with shock. That was close. She didn't even breathe hard. The life that still stands. After a long hour, the last drone fell. The team held their ground, breathing heavy, looking at the wreckage around them. The tower was still standing. The enemy had failed. We held the line, Mason said. Nira nodded. But this was only a test. They'll be back. Yes, she said. And next time, they'll bring more than drones. Mason looked out into the forest, his jaw tight. This mission was supposed to be simple. Heal, protect, return home. But now he knew the truth. This alliance was under attack. Enemies were rising again. And he, a simple soldier, stood in the middle of it, with a warrior princess beside him, sworn to protect him at all costs. And he was no longer sure who was protecting who. 3 days had passed since the drone attack. Mason and Nira were still posted at the northern edge, guarding the communication tower. New parts were being flown in from orbit, and the area had been reinforced. But now a new alert had come. A nearby outpost, called Station Gray, had gone silent. No signal, no response. It was supposed to be a small science station shared by humans and Valorians. No military weapons. No walls. Only peaceful tech workers and engineers. Mason stood in the command room of the base, reading the last transmission. A broken message full of static and short phrases. Unknown shapes. Walls breached. Taking shelter. Doors failing. Commander. Darnell placed a hand on Mason's shoulder. We need eyes on the ground. I can't send a full squad. Not until we know what happened. I'm asking you to go with a small team. Quiet entry. Fast check. Report back. Mason nodded. We'll leave now. Nira stepped beside him without a word. Darnell looked at her. You already know you're going with him, don't you? Always. she said. The transport ship hovered low over the tree line as it approached Station Gray. The sky was cloudy, the forest below dark and silent. The outpost came into view, slowly twisted metal gates, broken roof panels, scorch marks on the ground. Mason checked his gear, pulse rifle, sidearm, short-range beacon. Nira checked her energy blade and armor plates. Her face was calm as always, but her eyes were sharp. Scan shows no movement inside. The pilot said, "No heat, no power. It's a ghost town. Drop us near the east wall." Mason ordered. The team for soldiers, Mason, and Nira moved in silence across the open field toward the damaged wall. It had been torn apart from the outside. "Looks like they didn't just break in," one soldier said. "They smashed through." Inside, it was worse. Chairs were overturned, screens broken. Wires hung from the ceiling. Black marks on the ground showed plasma damage, but no bodies. "Where's everyone?" Mason whispered. Nira kneeled near a broken desk. "They were dragged. Yes, see the floor marks, pulled toward the lower level." Mason frowned. "Why take them instead of, killing them here?" Nira looked at him. "Some enemies enjoy fear more than death." The team moved deeper into the building. It was cold and quiet. Except for the soft hum of Mason's flashlight, they reached the stairs to the lower level. Mason paused. "Keep your weapons up. Move slow." They stepped down carefully. The air was thicker here. Dust floated in the beam of light. Then they heard a sound, a small bang, a metal tap, then silence again. "That wasn't us," one soldier whispered. Mason turned the corner, and what he saw made him freeze. A group of survivors, 3 humans and 2 Valorians, were huddled inside a locked storage room. Their faces were pale, clothes torn, but they were alive. Mason rushed forward and opened the door. "We're here to help," he said. One of the Valorians, an older man, looked up weakly. "They're still here. Don't make noise." "Who's here?" Mason asked. "The ones with metal skin." No voice, only clicking sounds. Mason's eyes narrowed. "Corn raiders," Nira said. "Silent hunters." Suddenly, the lights flickered. Then came the sound. Click, 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 sharp, repeating. All around. "Them. Positions," Mason shouted. "Form a circle around the survivors." The soldiers raised their rifles. Nira stood at the front with her blade glowing. From the shadows came tall, thin figures. Their armor was dark silver, their eyes glowing red. They moved fast, almost too fast to see. One leaped forward. Mason fired and hit it in the chest. Sparks flew, but it didn't fall. Nira jumped in, slicing through its arm, forcing it back. More came, from the ceiling, from the vents, from the side. Halls. The team fought back. Laser fire lit the hallway. Mason stayed close to the survivors, firing one shot after another. One of the soldiers screamed. A hunter had grabbed his arm, but Nira was there in seconds. Her blade cut through the creature's chest, saving the soldier. Mason shouted, "We need to move them out. This room's a trap." Back to the stairs. They pulled the survivors and ran, covering each other with fire. Nira stayed at the rear, taking down any enemy that got too close. Just as they reached the top, Mason saw the largest one yet appear. A leader, armor heavier, eyes glowing like fire. It raised its arm. A plasma cannon formed in its wrist. Nira turned. The blast came fast, but Mason grabbed her arm and pulled her down. The shot missed them both and hit the ceiling, breaking the structure above. Dust and rock fell as the hallway began to collapse. "Run," Mason shouted. The team made it out. Just in time, the roof caved in, burying the leader hunter. Outside. They placed the survivors into the transport. The engines roared as they lifted off. From above, Mason looked down at the burning station. "I don't think this was just a raid," he said. "They wanted something else." Nira looked at him. "They wanted fear, to send a message, and we just sent one back." That night, back at the base, the survivors were taken to the medbay. Mason sat near the barracks, his armor dusty and cracked. Nira stood beside him, quiet. "You saved me back there," she said. Mason looked up. "You've saved me more than once already. But this time, you pulled me from danger." Again, he gave a Small smile. Just keeping things balanced. She looked at him for a moment, her eyes soft. The bond grows stronger every time we stand for each other, she said. Mason nodded. I know. I don't mind anymore. Above them, the stars turned slowly. But Mason didn't look at the sky. He looked at the warrior beside him, and he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The outpost was quiet again. After the battle at Station Gray, things had changed. Everyone looked over their shoulder. Everyone double-checked their weapons. The attack had shaken the whole sector. Mason sat at the base command room, watching the security feed. The survivors from Station Gray were now safe, and repairs were happening fast. But something still felt wrong. The Corran raiders had attacked too cleanly, too perfectly. They knew when to strike. They knew where the survivors were hiding. And they didn't destroy the relay, only damaged it enough to draw attention. Mason leaned forward and pressed a few keys. He opened the outgoing signal logs. Something isn't right, he said. Nira walked in. She placed her energy staff on the wall rack and joined him at the screen. You feel it too? She asked. They knew too much, Mason said. That wasn't just a scout raid. They had information. They planned it well. Almost like someone told them where to hit. Nira looked at the feed for a while. Then she said, a traitor? Mason nodded. That's what I'm thinking. Someone is passing messages to the enemy. Mason didn't waste time. He met with Commander Darnell privately and showed him the data. Every secured base sends a small signal to the nearest command post. It's automated. But 2 hours before Station Gray was attacked, a separate signal was sent, not from the station. From here. Darnell frowned. From this base, Mason pointed to the screen. Yes, and not on our standard frequency. It was masked and hidden behind a fuel report file. Someone covered their tracks, Darnell said. But not well enough, Mason replied. They forgot one small time gap. That's how I found it. Darnell stood up. We'll run a check on every officer who had access to that channel. This isn't just dangerous. It's betrayal. Nira stepped into the room. She looked at Mason and then at the commander. We may not have much time. If that person is still here, they may strike again or warn the enemy later that night. Mason sat outside under the stars. Nira sat beside him, quiet as usual. You're thinking again. She said, I can't help it, Mason replied. Every soldier here trained for peace. But now we're in the middle of something darker. Spies. Sabotage. Lies. Nira looked at him. You are still strong. Even with doubt, you're not afraid of anything, are you? He asked. She looked up at the stars. I've been trained to fear nothing, but I still do. I fear losing the people I protect. I fear making the wrong choice. Mason nodded slowly. I guess that makes you human after all. Nira smiled for the first time. A small, rare smile. I think the bond has changed us both. She said. The next day, the base locked down for a security sweep. Every officer, engineer, and guard was scanned and questioned. But still no clear proof. Mason kept checking the data. He looked at shift logs, door entries, and communications. Then he found something strange. A junior officer named Rawlin had accessed the communication room minutes before the secret signal was sent, but he had no reason to be there. Mason ran to the room where Rawlin was stationed. The door was closed. He knocked. Rawlin, open up. No answer. Mason stepped back. Override the door. He told the nearby technician. The door opened with a soft hiss. The room was empty. The window was open, and a rope made of tied sheets hung from the ledge. He ran, Mason said. He knew we were getting close. An alarm echoed through the base. Nira came running. What happened? We found our traitor, Mason said. He just escaped. They chased him through the outer forest. Mason, Nira, into scouts moved fast, following the tracker signal. Rawlin had taken a stolen supply pack and a short-range beacon. Why would he run to the hills? One scout asked. That's enemy land. That's exactly why, Mason said. He's meeting someone. They reached the ridge above the forest. Below, a small ship was landing, a Corran-style shuttle. Sleek, silent, Rawlin ran to it. Waving a signal stick, Nira acted first. She jumped from the ridge and landed hard, rolling forward and pulling her blade. Mason followed. Rifle raised, Rawlin turned and pulled a blaster. He fired twice. The first shot missed. The second shot flew straight at Mason. But before it could hit, Nira stepped in front of him. The bolt struck her armor and bounced off, sparks flying. She didn't fall. Instead, she moved fast and struck Rawlin's weapon hand. Knocking the blaster into the dirt. Mason reached him and tackled him to the ground. "You're done," Mason said. Rawlin looked up, face pale. "You don't understand. Peace is a lie. The Corans made a better offer. We could have ended this war before it began." "You sold out your own people," Mason said. "For what? A promise." From killers, Rawlin didn't answer. The Coran shuttle lifted off, leaving him behind. They had no interest in saving him. Back at the base, Rawlin was locked in a secure chamber. The data he carried was destroyed, but Mason had copied the signal logs, the encryption keys, and proof of betrayal. The leadership was shaken, but now they understood the truth. The peace talks were under attack not just from outside but from within. That night, Mason and Nira stood at the edge of the base, watching the stars again. "You stepped in front of me again," Mason said. "You saved me first," Nira replied. He looked at her. "I think we're going to keep doing that for each other." Nira nodded. "Until there is no more danger." Mason looked toward the horizon. "Then, we better prepare, because I don't think this war is over." And Nira replied, "No, it's just beginning." The forest was quiet and still, but Mason's heart was pounding. He and Nira were leading a small patrol through the dense trees near the border. Their mission was simple: scout the area, check for enemy activity, and report back. But Mason knew better. Every mission since the betrayal had been dangerous. Nira walked beside him, her blade sheathed but ready. Her armor blended with the green and brown of the forest. "Stay alert," Mason said quietly. Nira nodded. "I sensed something bad." Suddenly, a sharp sound cracked the silence. A twig snapped. Mason stopped and raised his rifle. Nira drew her energy blade, its blue glow lighting the dark forest from the shadows. A figure leaped forward, cloaked, fast, and deadly. Mason's heart skipped a beat. The assassin from the ceremony had returned. The cloaked attacker's blade glowed red, humming with deadly power. It swung toward Mason in a blur. Mason dove aside, but the edge caught his shoulder. Pain exploded. He stumbled but kept his balance. Nira was already moving. Her blade clashed against the assassin's weapon. Sparks flew as the two blades struck again and again. The assassin was faster, but Nira was stronger. She pushed forward, forcing the attacker back step by step. Mason gritted his teeth and raised his rifle. He fired a pulse shot. The attacker deflected it with a sudden twist and disappeared into the trees. "She's retreating," Nira said. Mason felt the burning pain in his shoulder. "We need to follow." They moved quickly, but the forest grew thicker. The attacker vanished. Suddenly, the assassin appeared again, cutting off their path. Mason raised his rifle again, but this time, the assassin lunged at Nira. Mason stepped forward to block, but the blade swung toward him. Nira shouted, "No," and threw herself in front of Mason. The red blade sliced into her armor, sparks flying. She fell to the ground, gasping but alive. Mason rushed to her side. His hand shook as he checked her wounds. "You saved me," she whispered, "and you saved me first." Mason said. The battle had left them both shaken. They managed to return to the base, Nira leaning on Mason for support. The healers worked quickly, repairing the damage to her armor and tending to her wounds. Mason sat beside her as the treatment finished. "You don't have to repay me anymore," Nira said softly. "The law says the debt is fulfilled." Mason looked surprised. "You're sure?" "Yes," she said. "But I do not want to leave you." "Not yet." He smiled faintly. "Neither do I." They both knew the bond between them was no longer just tradition or law. It had become something deeper. Days later, the base received word that the assassins group was planning another attack. This time, it was bigger and more dangerous. Mason and Nira prepared for battle. The whole base was on alert. When the enemy arrived, it was under the cover of night. Drones flew over the trees. Raiders moved like shadows through the underbrush. Mason and Nira led the defense. Nira's blade cut through enemy armor, her movements sharp and precise. Mason fired his pulse rifle, covering her every step. The enemy pushed hard, but the defenders stood firm. At one point, Mason was caught in an explosion. He was thrown to the ground, his ears ringing. Nira was there immediately, shielding him with her body. "You don't leave me," she said firmly. "I don't plan to," Mason replied. Together, they fought back the attackers until the last one fell. After the battle, Mason cradled Nira gently. "You could have died," he said. "I would die for you," she answered. He looked into her eyes and saw something new. Not just duty, not just law. Love. The next morning, Mason and Nira stood on the hill overlooking the base. "The debt is over," Mason said, "but our bond is stronger than ever." Nira smiled. "Yes, and we will face whatever comes next together." The stars shone above them, bright and steady. Their story was just beginning. The morning sun rose over the Valorian forward base. Its light touched the silver towers and green trees. Birds sang softly in the distance. But Mason felt no peace. He stood beside Nira on the balcony of the main building. Both looked out toward the horizon. The war was not over. The threats were still there. But something had changed. "We made it this far," Mason said quietly. Nira nodded. "Yes, because we trusted each other." Mason smiled. "I never thought I would owe a princess my life, and I never thought I would owe a soldier mine." They both laughed softly. Days passed as the base worked hard to rebuild. The new communication relays were installed, stronger and better protected. Valorian and human soldiers trained together. Engineers shared ideas. A real alliance was growing. But Mason and Nira's bond grew stronger too. They trained side by side, fought side by side, and learned to trust in a way that went beyond duty or law. One evening, after a long day of training, Mason sat with Nira near the fire pit outside the base. "Do you ever think about home?" he asked. Nira looked up at the stars. "Sometimes, but now, this is my home. With you," Mason smiled. "I feel the same." They sat quietly, the fire crackling between them. Then came the news. The Corn government had sent a message. They wanted peace talks again. But this time, it was real. They had seen Mason and Nira's courage. They knew the alliance between Earth and Valoria was strong. Mason and Nira were asked to lead the diplomatic mission. They would meet with the Corn leaders in person. The day of the meeting arrived. Mason stood in a grand hall, surrounded by Corn officials. Nira stood beside him, calm and proud. The room was tense. Old wounds ran deep. But Mason spoke first. "We are not enemies anymore," he said clearly. "We fought hard to find peace, and we want to keep it." Nira stepped forward. "I owe my life to a human soldier." That bond shows that our people can trust each other. The Corn leaders listened carefully. For the first time, they saw the proof of unity. After long talks, they agreed to join the alliance, back on the ship returning home. Mason and Nira looked at each other. "We changed everything," Mason said. "Yes," Nira said. "Because we chose to stand together." Mason reached out and took her hand. Their bond was no longer just a life debt. It was a promise of friendship, trust, and hope for the future. As the ship entered Earth's atmosphere, Mason felt something new. Not just the end of a mission, but the start of a new chapter. One where humans and Valorians stood side by side. Together. Stronger. Forever.